Hey, before we get started on this episode of the Steve and Crypto Show, I have a couple quick announcements. We are now officially a member of the Deluxe Edition Network. It is a collective of very entertaining podcasts. You should check it out at deluxeeditionnetwork.com and see the whole group of great shows that are on there. There's other pop culture, horror, all kinds of talk on there. It's right up our alley. And check them out. And also, we were recently invited to an event called SquatchCon. It's here in the Northwest in Port Angeles, Washington. It is a pop culture convention, and it should be a blast. They invited us. We'll be attending on Sunday of that event. The event runs March 30th through April 2nd, but we will be there in person hanging out. We'll have merch and all that good stuff. So come by and see us if you're in the Northwest. Come up to Port Angeles. Hang out with us. It's at SquatchCon. Get all the details at squatchconpa.com. That's SQUATCHCONPA.com. And I will put both of these links in our show notes. Now let's get to the Steve and Crypto Show.
Hello, this is Igoro, host of the Igoro Show. And you are listening to the Steve and Crypto Show. So keep your ears open and your mouth shut.
Hey, welcome to the Steve and Paul Show.
Wait, who the fuck is Paul?
Obviously, we're the Steve and Crypto Show.
Better be.
That's a little nod to a movie that we're going to be talking about over on Patreon. So if you are a patron or if you're not a patron, get over there to join. Tell them about Patreon.
Oh, of course, Patreon is a wonderful place full of exclusive content waiting for you. You can visit patreon.com/SteveCrypto, and we have a few things over there. As Steve just mentioned, we're going to have a Scream little spoiler talk that'll be there very soon.
Spoiler, very
spoilery. So if you've seen the movie and you want to listen to a chat from a couple nerds that just vent about that, or things that we love about it, maybe things we don't love about it, a mixture of it all, go check that out, patreon.com/SteveCrypto. And there's a few other things over there you can watch and listen to.
That's coming soon, by the way.
Yeah.
I don't know if you mentioned that it's
I did.
coming soon.
Coming soon, okay. Yeah. But right now, there's an assortment.
Good job, Paul.
Yeah, there's an assortment of entertainment over there you can check out that is exclusive to Patreon. There's a couple things that we released on other platforms later, but there's also some things that you can only find there. So again, patreon.com/SteveCrypto. And of course, we have our Buy Me a Coffee page, which is buymeacoffee.com/SteveCrypto. All contributions go towards the show, promotions, towards buying new gear, helps out with a lot of different things. So we appreciate everyone who has contributed so far. And if you're looking to get some merch for your third favorite podcast, which we hope is the Steve and Crypto Show, you can visit Etsy and just look us up there. Or you can be exact and type in Etsy/shop/Steve and Crypto merch if you like. We have 2 different t-shirt designs there. There's a coffee mug. We have a magnet for your fridge. And also, if you just want to get a sticker from us, you can contact us directly online at the Steve Strout, CryptoZoo88. Maybe leave a review and tell us that you love the show. We'll send you some stickers. Speaking of reviews, you can go to your favorite streaming app, whatever you use to listen to us, and we prefer a 5-star review, if you're feeling generous. And we might even feature that review on the show, which I think we're going to start doing sooner or later.
If we ever get any, yes, we'll read your reviews.
We want to read them on the show and just give you guys a little thank you. And
they help.
Yeah, they definitely do help. And speaking of that, we were recently featured on Good Pods. So we have made the following lists. We are number 17 in the top 100 indie entertainment news chart, number 20 in the top 100 entertainment news chart, and number 30 in the top 100 indie news chart. So thanks to Good Pods for that. It really is kind of bringing a little bit more attention to our show and what we do.
And that is one of the places you can review us. You could review us there. You could go to Apple Podcast. You can rate us on Spotify. There's also Podchaser where you can review as well. And there's probably other ones. I'm not sure if I don't know all of them. I just know the main ones.
Yeah, Apple Podcasts for sure. We'll let you review. I also want to mention real quick that we have a Facebook group, and we encourage you to contribute to that. I mean, you can just be a member and check out what everybody has to offer if you like. But if you have something that you're working on, if you got a trailer for a movie that you just created, or maybe you want to share a page from your comic book or a song from your upcoming album, feel free to post it in there so everybody can check it out. I know we have a fair amount of people in there, and
It's growing.
yeah, it's growing. There's a variety of folks that are that have their eyes on it. So, if you want some new people to check out what you're working on, post it in the group. And be sure to follow us. I think I mentioned our emails earlier for like if you get a sticker, or if you want to get a sticker from us. I mentioned contacting us online. But again, that's CryptoZoo88, the Steve Strout on Instagram, and you can find us on Facebook as well.
Twitter is the best place to find me.
Go to Twitter. Yep. I'm not as active on there, but I'm trying.
So yeah, keep supporting. You could definitely, you heard us mention in the last episode, at least one episode, maybe two episodes, that we are nominated for the best podcast category in the Rondo Hatton Classic Horror Awards, which is fucking huge for us.
Yeah, it's our second nomination, so we must be doing something right.
We're doing all right. We're doing all right. But yeah, you can go to rondoaward.com and get the details on how to vote. There's a ton of categories, awesome stuff in there. Check them all out. Vote in many as you can. But, of course, vote for the Stephen Crypto Show as best podcast, because third favorite is basically the best. If that don't make sense. But hopefully you guys are voting for us. It'll help. We definitely want to make some noise on the ballot this year. We want to get noticed. We want to at least get an honorable mention or something. But yeah, check out the other categories. You'll dig them. There's a lot of cool stuff. Even if you don't know any of this stuff, check it out anyways. Investigate it. Look into it. Maybe you'll find a new book that you enjoy, or another podcast that you like, or a movie or something. So yeah, vote for the Stephen Crypto Show in the Rondo Awards. Go to rondoaward.com. It's old school how they do it. You're just going to send an email. All that info is on there. On a kind of a side note to that, check out, when you're looking through the categories, the indie films, the movie It Came From Somewhere. I recommend voting for them.
Yeah.
Just because my face appears in that movie. So I'm in that movie. That's like the first movie I was ever in. So go vote for that one too. That's
all the movies you contributed to, and that's the first one you were in? Really?
Yeah, I guess.
Okay. I thought there was another one.
But yeah, we want to make noise in the Rondo Awards.
Speaking of awards and categories, things like that, I know the Oscars were on last weekend, but I wasn't tuning into that because I was too busy watching the Oscars. Now, if you want to watch that again, if you missed it, or if you already watched it and you want to watch it again, you can head over to the Horror Addicts channel on YouTube. And there's a ton of different entertainers and podcasters that were involved.
As were we.
Yes, we were involved. We thank Horror Addicts for including us. And there's a few other friends of ours that were a part of it as well. So just go check that out. If you're a horror fan, you're going to love it. You'll probably learn about some new movies and titles that might have slipped through the cracks that you haven't heard of. I know I did. I mean, there were a few in there that
the cracks.
There's a few that were listed that I had never heard of, that even just the small little 5-6 second clip that they put in was intriguing, and was like, "Ooh, I got to check that out." Like, even some of them that we mentioned for nominations, like crabs, look kind of cool.
I actually went. I
hatching
when I seen the nomination list, because we got it in advance, because Horror Addicts asked us to present the winner of the best creature for 2022, and crabs was on the list. I didn't watch that yet, but I did watch it after seeing the list, and it was a fun movie.
I did watch. I watched the winning video, months ago, and you'll
Barbarian.
Well, okay, I wasn't gonna say it.
It's already passed, but definitely it's still fun to watch.
Yeah. So go check that out on the Horror Addicts channel. Once again, thanks to those guys for having us.
And subscribe while you're there.
Yep,
it's a cool channel. They do a lot of great reviews and stuff.
Mm-hmm. And the next upcoming live event that one of us will be a part of, Steve might make an appearance.
I might.
I'm going to be at the OCE, the Olympic Collectible Expo, and that is next month, April 29th, at the Kitsap Mall in Silverdale, Washington. It's basically like a little mini Comic-Con, like it's free, it's all ages. It's just held like right in the middle of the mall, basically. And there's all kinds of local artists, and there's vendors selling comic books, toys. My friend Jarrett and I are going to be there. I know he's bringing some Pokemon cards, all kinds of different things. I have a shit ton of Funko Pops I'm bringing, along with like some.
You're not going to dump
movies.
them in the landfill like Funko?
No. I'm trying to put these in the hands of all you nice listeners out there that
unload
collect
them soon, because Funko stock's going down.
I noticed that.
You have to lower your Funko price. Fucking BOGO. BOGO.
So again, that's going down Saturday, April 29th. I believe it's from 10 to 5 at the Kitsap Mall in Silverdale, Washington. Free. Bring the family. Come check it out. And if you're a vendor that's looking to get a table, there may be tables available still. I'm not sure. But you can contact JD Sweet, and his email, I will have that in just 1 second, Steve, if you want to chat to them for a minute.
Yeah, JD Sweet has an email. We've had him on here before talking about.
Yeah, we had him on for
one of the last OCEs, which we actually had fun. I mean, it wasn't like prosperous or anything for anybody, I think, but it was a good time.
Yeah.
It was cool mingling and chatting with other creators and stuff. And, so I think you found it.
I did. If you want, contact JD Sweet at OCE98383@gmail.com. You can ask him about vendor space, if that's still available. And
tell him Steven Crypto Show sent you.
Yeah. Tell him we sent you.
It won't get you any perks or anything, but it might get us some. So,
but I hope to see you there. It's gonna be a great time.
So I think it's about time we intro a guest for this week. We have an Australian author, historian, nerd named Phil Hore. Yes, last name is Hore. Hore. He made some funny jokes about that. When I questioned him, when I met him, I was like, "So, is it pronounced?" He's like, "Yeah," and he made a joke, something about
pronounced Hooer.
About like his mom said something about like it's the lowest grossing whorehouse in Australia or something. But yeah, it was pretty funny. But so Phil he's an author, like I mentioned. He has a few books out. He has one that was pretty intriguing. I need to pick up and read still, but it's called Horror, and it's about the war and like the censorship against comic books and stuff back in the days, like in the 50s. And he released that a couple years ago and got pretty good reviews. We talked a little bit about that. He kind of went in depth about, told us some stories about little bits and pieces about, stuff getting censored and just how censorship in Australia was like really strict until recently. And yeah, he has a new book coming out, which was the main reason we wanted to talk, the hype. Because, this year is a anniversary year of The Thing. He wrote a book about The Thing, I guess we'll call it a franchise, because it was based on another classic sci-fi movie. And then I believe it was remade at one point too.
Yeah.
And he talks about that and the original story that inspired the movies and all that stuff. And he has a book all about that, the whole Thing franchise stuff, which is coming really soon. Like, as soon as I get info on it, I'll share it with you.
I love The Thing. I didn't even watch it until I was probably 19. When I worked at a video store, I was sick and just taking some movies home for the weekend or whatever. And I rented 2 movies that changed my, I shouldn't say changed my interest in horror, but it just upgraded it even further. And I just fell in love with both of them, The Thing and Evil Dead. And now they're both 2 of my top favorites.
I can't wait for that new Evil Dead movie.
Yeah.
I've heard people talk about it already. I think they screened it at South by Southwest.
Yes, they did.
And I heard it was really fucking good.
I'm looking forward to it.
So I'm excited about that. But yeah,
it's going to be groovy.
Not to go too far off topic. The author's name is Phil Hore. I'm sorry. That's a great name. And he is joining us for a few minutes here to tell us about some of his books and what he has coming up. So let's just jump right into that. Then when we get back, we will do the usual trivia and say goodbye.
This is Jada Libra, and you're listening to the Steve and Crypto Show.
You are listening to the Steve and Crypto Show. I am Hank, the world's greatest, the host of Death by DVD.
I'm Linnea, and I like Death by DVD. It's a statement.
And I'm in your house. So, once you finish listening to this episode and download 3 more, head on over to www.deathbydvd.com, where there are over 130 blood-soaked episodes all about your favorite horror, exploitation, cult, and psychotronic movies available to stream and download for your listening displeasure. I hope you enjoy this episode of the Steve and Crypto Show, and remember to start locking your back door.
Hey, this is Butch Patrick, and you're listening to the Steve Crypto Show.
Hello, welcome to the Steve and Crypto Show. I am joined from the future by an author named Phil Hore. He has a few books that he's already published. He's working on a book about The Thing, which is an absolute classic. So I'm definitely excited for that one. We corresponded on Facebook for a while and have been talking about trying to get him on the show because I wanted to hear about what he has going on, but we finally found the right timing to get it done. It did require time travel. So it's a Thursday here on my end, and it's tomorrow in Australia. So let's jump right in, meet Phil. You guys need to hear about these books he has. They're really interesting. So let's roll. And how you doing?
I'm doing well, and yes, here we are in the future. We've got flying cars and we can transport through Star Trek-like beams.
Yeah, beam me up. Yeah. Right on. Let's just jump right in. Tell us about your background, and then we'll get into some of your books, some of your work.
Well, I'm a museum educator by trade, so I've worked for the Smithsonian, the Chicago Field Museum, London Natural History Museum, Australian War Memorial, lots of different places, which has kind of given me a weird brain. I have this ability to link and remember. And if you're a comic book fan, if you grew up reading comic books, I try and explain to people that you have to remember that in issue 309, they introduced this character who doesn't come back until issue 506. And so you kind of network your brain in a weird way. And that's helped me kind of discover all these weird stories that have kind of been missed because people don't link that this story and that story are the same story. So, in history, I've got a history podcast, Bizarre Australian History, where I kind of show that, Australia was discovered by Europe because of the fall of the Roman Empire. And when you say that out loud, people look at you like you're wearing a tinfoil hat, and so they start trying to back towards the door and not break eye contact. But it's all true because in Australia, we were English in a way. Our history is taught by basically English textbooks, and we never learned the French or the Dutch or all these other European nations that were plying the South Seas and discovering places. So it's helped me out a lot, and I've been able to use that technique to kind of put it towards other things, like my next book coming out about The Thing, the movie franchise, or the entire franchise of The Thing, because I don't think people realize just how many Thing products there are out there. They just think it's the 1982 movie and the 1951 movie, and then the 2011 movie, if you count that. But there's a lot more.
What are some of the topics and stuff you're going to touch on in the book?
Well, it's basically a history of the entire franchise. So we start with the original short story, I shouldn't say short story, novella, Who Goes There by John Campbell. And I've been talking to his grandkids. And then we go on, there was another version just before the 1951 version, which was a song. And it was a massive song at the time. And if you look into it, people aren't sure if it's part of did the guy hear that this movie was coming out called The Thing? And so he's released a song called The Thing and basically proved, absolutely. In fact, I show he had a habit of jumping on pop culture fads. This guy wrote songs about hula hooping when hula hooping was big. So we just go time by time up until basically last year. All the different franchises that I could find were either based on The Thing or inspired, and he does that with air quotes, inspired by The Thing.
Okay. So what's the timeline on the book releasing?
We were waiting on the cover art, and I think I showed you a rough of the cover art before, so that's in. Publishers now just putting the book through their edit process. So it's all written, all done. I actually had to send them a little update because I keep discovering new things and
things.
But this one was really important. Yeah. And I try not to make that joke too many times in the book, like it's too easy to do.
Yeah.
I think if you word counted how many times the thing is put in that book, it must come in the thousands. Which is why I actually stopped. I stopped calling them by their names. I start calling them by their dates. So the 1951 movie, I just call 51 or 82, because you just be monotonously reading the same. The Thing, 1982. The Thing, 1951. So it's just being edited at the moment, and the cover art's in, so it should be very, very shortly. I'll get a release date, and we'll put up a pre-order thing, and off we go to the races.
So it should be this year then.
Oh, it's definitely this year. It'll be a month. It'll roughly be about a month.
So it's pretty close. Like there's just a big anniversary from the 82 thing.
And that's what kind of inspired me to do it. I knew there was a book on there's a book on the Planet of the Apes franchise. That guy I talked to, Steve Bissett, who kind of helped design Constantine in Swamp Thing comics and stuff like that. He's a famous comic artist. He wrote a book about Planet of the Apes, and but the franchise. And there was a book on the Escape from New York that came out a little while ago. So I knew these sorts of books were out there, but I couldn't see. The Thing is a weird franchise. Like, it's almost like the horror version of Harry Potter. And I hate to say that because I hate Harry Potter, but fans are very passionate and they know everything about it. And they've read the books and they've watched the movie 1,000 times, and they know every little. So I was shocked this hadn't been done before. And a couple of books have started to come out with the artwork and short stories inspired by the movie, but there wasn't anything about the actual history of the franchise. So I went, well, we got the anniversary coming up. Let's do it.
Yeah, it's the right timing. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So we'll definitely keep an eye out for that. You said within months it should be out. So
yeah, very shortly.
Yeah, later in the episode.
The good thing is,
go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
No, you go ahead.
I was just the problem with time travel is we're a bit far apart.
Yeah.
The publisher is Marcosi Publishing, and they had published my earlier book, which was on a similar kind of theme, which was the history of horror books in the 1950s, horror comics in the 1950s, and war on comic books all over the world. It's not just an American Senate hearing into comic books in the 50s. It was all over the world. It was in England, it was in Italy, France, Australia, New Zealand. So that I'd already published a similar book with them. So it was quite easy for me to go to them and say, look, this is coming up. I think we've got a potential of getting this out before anybody else does. And they were like, yeah, let's go for it. So just got it done.
Right. So you mentioned the horror book about well, tell us about that book.
Yeah. So I managed a comic book shop in the 90s for a couple of years. And in fact, during the huge mid-90s comic crash where comic book shops started closing, the speculation craze, people had Wall Street Journal writing, invest in new comics and buy 100 of them and put them away, and you'll be able to put your kid through college in 20 years' time, which of course didn't happen. But yeah, I was managing a comic shop in Canberra, the capital of Australia, and we were one of the only shops that was increasing our sales because we just weren't going into that. We were just trying to build collectors, like actual people who wanted these sorts of stories. So we didn't overinvest in stuff we knew we weren't going to make money on in the future. And so we did pretty well. But always there was this story of Dr. Frederick Wortham, who wrote a book called Seduction of the Innocent, which was all about, it's basically what triggered this craze in the 50s that crime and horror comics were ruining the kids. And the way I explain it is every generation, the behavior of the kids is blamed on the media. So at the moment it's computer games. They're so violent. They're destroying children. And in the 90s, it was rap music is destroying children. And in the late 80s, it was heavy metal music is destroying children. In the 50s, it was comics.
It destroyed me.
Difference being, but I was managing a comic shop, and I'd have mothers bringing their kids in, and they were complaining to me as their kid was browsing, looking for their latest issues, going, I just hate this. I just hate that they're reading comics. I'm like, your kid's reading. They're growing their imagination. They're not out on the street. They're not playing computer games. They're not becoming a mindless zombie. They're reading. And I don't know any comic book collector that didn't become a book reader in the future as they got older. Like, it's a form of literacy, and it's been proven to be a very effective form of literacy. So it was with all these kind of things in mind. And then I kept, I just did a bit of research, and I found some amazing stories in Australia, and then I found some amazing stories in other countries. I went, there's a serious tale to be told here. So eventually I just went, right, well, I guess I'm the one who has to do it. So I did.
How did that What kind of feedback and stuff did you get on the book?
It's interesting. Like one review was, I kind of took to heart because it's one of the first ones where a guy kind of got it and went, it's a bit over the place, like, because I think the problem is most people think this is an American story, and if you know the story, you expect it to roll out in a narrative way. You know, Frederick Wortham released his book, then the Senate hearings, and then all these things happen in a sequence. But what I would try to show is the cascade of how Frederick Wortham would write an article in the newspaper, and then that article would get reprinted in England. And it triggered a whole thing because a lot of people don't understand what was happening after the Second World War. And this is why America's got such a strong influence. Like it's the most amazing story. It's so important, this story. America's influence just spread across the globe. And even today, you often hear other countries complaining that our kids are being Americanized. Our kids are growing up sounding American because they're watching American TV shows and American Sesame Street when they're 3-year-old. And so they learn to say, you know, Z instead of Z, or the American way of saying things, and saying candy instead of, you know, chocolate or lolly or however another country says it. And in the 50s, it was a serious problem because all these ships going all over the world carrying military equipment during the Second World War, they all had to have ballast. They had to have things in the ship to keep them from rolling over when they're empty. And the easiest thing to do was fill them full of pulp because other countries needed pulp, old magazines, old comics, old books. And companies in these other countries realized, hang on, we can buy those and sell them on this market we'll buy them for nothing and then sell them for almost face value, and we're going to make a mint. And that's how all these American magazines started to influence England and Australia, and all the local governments really reacted very strongly to it. There were laws written to stop this influence of US magazines and US comic books. And they were complaining, you know, like it's destroying our own local comic industry or our own local magazine industry. And it was becoming a serious issue. And the other thing was you had to pay for these with American dollars. And England had just fought the Second World War, and Australia had just borrowed nearly, you know, billions of dollars to pay for the war. And they're having to repay all these loans while still having to buy US goods with US dollars, put a massive financial crisis on their economies. So what sounds like a little jokey, oh, you know, horror comics, you know, people didn't like them, scaring the kids, is actually a massive story. It's a really important story, and it's all about basically how the world pulled out of the Second World War financially and economically. And so, yeah, I kind of took that review to heart, going, yeah, I don't think you got it. Like, because I was probably talking about an English thing, and you don't know the history of England, so wasn't interesting to you. And yet, even in that bad review, they still said, but he came up with lots of things I didn't know, because that's what I'm good at, is finding the unusual stuff. So, you know, on the people who really, really know the story, there's been some good reviews, and then I think there's just been a couple of people who just may not have gone into it with the kind of thought I was hoping they would have, which is why I put that title on there, horror. You know, the first time America's paranoia infected the world, because I was really getting that published during a certain time when a certain orange president was making news every day and freaking everyone out. And it's always been said, like, the one true art form America has, you know, you could argue cinema, but one of the jobs I had was the National Film and Sound Archives, and a lot of people aren't aware that the first full movie was an Australian movie. For a while, Australia and Hollywood were neck and neck. A lot of Americans don't realize Felix the Cat is Australian. Before Disney, you know, the first real comic cartoon superstar was an Australian. But very quickly, Hollywood bought him over, and Felix became an American thing, but it was an Australian thing. So Australia was, a lot of the countries were making movies and things like that. But I guess my point is, comic books was the real American art form that America can claim as their own. And so it's a very important story, and it's a very important piece of artwork. And so that's one reason why I was writing the book is, I don't think people realize just how important comic books are to modern history.
Yeah, it's true. Very true. And a lot of it kind of goes both ways, I guess, because a lot of current events and events over time kind of played into comic book stories too. If you look like early days of Captain America, fighting Hitler and stuff, it kind of, comics have been a very prominent part of the world.
Well, no, that's true. And that's something I cover in the book is there's this whole Nazi Jewish thing going on because the creators of Superman were both two young Jewish lads, but the Nazis knew that, and they were releasing press releases and articles and stuff directly attacking Superman, who was using the Ubermensch, the German idea of the best sort of human being. So yeah, like comic books were even part of the beginning of the Second World War and the real final solution and stuff. It's quite bizarre how integral they've been for a long time. They helped change basically a lot of the attitudes. Like at the moment, I'm living in Queensland. Even today, Queensland has quite strict censorship laws, and that starts with comics.
Right.
It was one of the things a lot of people don't know is that basically what they're saying is crime comics were creating criminals, that kids were reading these crime comics and then aping what they read in the comic and doing the crime, which statistics show is ridiculous. Otherwise, you'd have it was the biggest media at the time. A magazine at the time would sell maybe 2 million copies a month, whereas Superman was selling 20 million issues a month, and that's just Superman. That's not all the other comics as well. It was the number one media in the world at the time. So you'd have, if it was true, you'd have hordes of criminals everywhere, but you didn't. So it was just ridiculous. However, what a lot of people don't know is in Australia, our longest serving criminal and one of Australia's most famous serial killers is also Australia's number one comic book artist from the 1940s. And his comic was actually more popular than Superman, more popular than the Lone Ranger. It was the most popular comic in Australia. We don't have Halloween, but kids would get dressed up for birthday parties and stuff. And he had costumes in the shop that you could buy. It was just the biggest thing. And he turns out to be an evil, evil guy. And I kind of point out in my book, if America knew this was going on, comics would have been in really bad shape. But in Queensland, they did. It was a big story at the time. And Queensland actually brought in heavily censored laws that then bled into books, that then bled into TV, that then bled into movies. And they got to censor all these things because they originally got to censor this comic because of its association with a murderer. It gets to the point in Australia, like Australia's kind of considered this, we're all so free loving and we're funny and what an open society. That's very recently. Up until very recently, we were almost as bad as, and I don't mean to pick on South Africa, but South Africa and apartheid, we were just behind them. We had the White Australia policy where the government would only allow white Europeans into Australia. If you're Asian or African, you couldn't get in. The censorship of things like horror is so bad, and I'm actually writing an article about this at the moment. King Kong, the original King Kong, was banned from Australia for 30 years. Could not be shown in Australia at all on TV, anything, for 30 years because of its association with horror.
So you kind of had to be kind of had to find a roundabout ways to find all the good movies and comics and
so did Hollywood. which is why if you look at the 1951, The Thing from Another World, it's not marketed as a horror movie. It's marketed as a science fiction action film because they're not allowed to go the horror way. If they go the horror way, they've lost their Australian market. They're starting to lose their England market. England's starting to bring in the same laws. A lot of countries would not allow that movie in if it was marketed as a horror film. And that's one reason why we go from these universal horror monsters, or the creature from the Black Lagoon, which I think you can see behind me, Dracula, Frankenstein, all the classic horror things suddenly drop out of sight like a stone because you're not allowed to make those movies anymore. In America, it's okay. Those movies are doing okay, but you need that foreign market. And foreign markets are saying, no, you cannot release a horror film in our country. So suddenly all these films are being marketed in a different, more creative way.
Right. So it's loosened up at this point a bit, right?
Today, today they're mostly gone. And one of my favorite things is the Australian archives. Somebody went into the like they've got a bottom basement, and they found all the crates of all the things that were being sent to the censor at the time and being rejected. So these are all pristine copies of all the Marvel horror comics and pristine copies. You know, these things are worth a mint. And they're just going through box after box after box. And it's, and now there's no problem. But at the time, and even in the 70s, one of the stories I talk about in the book is about Led Zeppelin came to Australia. And they got into massive trouble because they kept getting in trouble with the censors and things like that. So it's only until basically the 80s that Australia really opened up.
You mentioned all the comics and stuff that didn't get through the censors that they found in the archives. Do you know what happened with all that stuff? Did they just keep it in there? They burn it? They put it out in the market? Or
I definitely don't think they burned it. I think the article I was reading at the time was saying, what are we going to do with this? Are we going to officially put it into the Australian Library, which is one of the world's big libraries, or do we want to sell it and make the money? And I should probably follow that up because I'm not sure what happened, but I'm going to say it's stayed there because it's an important part of Australian history. And that's what the article was saying, is this is an important moment that today we just look back on and we don't realize just how strict Australia used to be. It was like the right-wingest of right-wing countries. And today, even when we're kind of leaning to the right, we're still very much the left. So I think they're probably going to build it into maybe a display or something like that because it's an important story all over the world, not just here. One of my favorite stories is in Italy. It was Mussolini who was trying to end the influence of American comics in Italy. And he got into big trouble because his kids were massive Disney fans. And they started a rebel in his house. And he eventually went, all right, we'll let the Disney comics in. And then they go like, well, if you let them in, you've got to let the others in. So it was his kids and their love of Donald Duck that kind of finished the censorship of comics in Italy. And it's just happening all over the world. France is always fascinating. I love that the French actually have a government department that takes modern created words and tries to create a French variant so that the English word doesn't enter the French lexicon. Things like iPad or iPod, they won't let the French say that word. They'll come up with a French version of that word. And so there's an actual organization. And that was happening with the comics. They didn't want the American comics coming in because the French are famous for their comics. And so they heavily attacked, and not just American comics, they attacked their own comics. Some of their comics became so Americanized. There was some crime comics that they really went after because they just didn't like how American they were.
So yeah, where can people find this book? So
everything's on Amazon. So that's always the easiest. Or the individual publishing companies and things like that. I'm hoping that they come out in audio form soon, and I'm going to really push hard for The Thing to be on audiobook. I think that's one that people who like to listen to audiobooks will like to listen to this one because, as I said, it's not just about the 1951 movie. We go into Doctor Who. There's a lot of Doctor Who stories that are absolute rip-offs of the thing, like almost scene for scene. And a bunch of 70s horror movies in Italy and stuff, which were clearly the thing.
Right.
So it covers a lot of different aspects. And like my first book was a kind of horror, crime, Sherlocky Holmesy kind of book, because I basically discovered that Arthur Conan Doyle, who wrote Sherlock Holmes, and Bram Stoker, who wrote Dracula, in real life were cousins.
Oh, wow.
And they were both in London in 1888, one working as a doctor, another one as a newspaper reporter during the Ripper murders. And I just thought, you've got to use that.
Yeah.
That's just too cool. So I came up with a storyline where my two characters are a bit Sherlocky, a bit Watson-y, and the Stoker discovers what's happening. There's all these murders happening, and it's based on the I don't know if you like your old classic movies. There's the old Humphrey Bogart movie, The Big Sleep,
Right.
which is a Raymond Chandler story. So yeah, this is actually based on The Big Sleep, but it's the Ripper murders, and it's a Sherlock Holmes story without Sherlock Holmes. And so whenever anything Sherlocky Holmesy happens in that, Doyle, who's the doctor helping them out, goes, "Oh, that's a good idea for a story." And if anything Dracula-y happens, Stoker's like, "Oh, that's a good idea for a story." And that one, like, it's a lot of fun, and it's done so well that the sequel's about to come out, which is set around the Mummy, because it's the 100th anniversary of King Tut's tomb. People don't realise it's the 100th anniversary of the opening of King Tut's tomb.
What's this book called?
I've just forgotten the name of the book. Well, the sequel's coming out. Like, I don't think I've got the title for it yet. I've finished the book. I'm discussing the title at the moment, but it's basically the Bloodline trilogy. So book one is Brotherhood of the Dragon, which is all based around the actual Vlad Dracula, the knight that the Pope hired to stop the Islam from invading Europe, who is what Dracula is based on.
Right.
And his knight order was the Order of the Dragon. And so the second one is based more around the Mummy, and it's all about Alexander the Great and Napoleon. Why did Napoleon go to Egypt? And we now know, but for a long time, people had no idea. What the hell did he do? Why was he in Egypt? He's got better things to do with his time. But my storyline is something's constantly growing in Egypt, and these world powers have to kind of step in and try and stop it from spreading to the rest of the world. So again, all based on real history. And for book two, I discovered that Alexander Dumas, the guy who wrote Three Musketeers, he's African, and B, his dad, who is also called Alexander Dumas, was Napoleon's second in charge.
Oh, wow.
So a black soldier in France was the second most important soldier. And both of these men take their troops and go to Egypt for some bizarre reason. And unfortunately, things don't go too well for Alexander Dumas, the senior, which is why he kind of drops out of history. But that's an important story. So it's basically a Caribbean slave becomes the second most powerful man in France. And who's ever heard that?
I had no idea.
So it's the same characters as the first book, just they're both very long-lived. My Sherlocky, my Watson guy are basically very long-lived, and they're bored, so they're just investigating crimes.
That's cool. I like how you really use actual history.
And that's what I was
as
going
a
back
basis.
to originally. That's
Yeah.
the way my brain works. Little factoids. I kind of tell people that military historians are a bit like basketball card collectors or baseball card collectors. I'll swap you my, Billy Mantle for your, Jordan. We've all got these facts and little factoids like cards, and we kind of hold them in our heads. And when you meet a fellow military historian, you kind of play them a little bit to see, oh, do you know this? Like you're showing them a card and they're like, oh, I do know that. And I can add a story to that. And you're like, oh, well, I can add a story to that. So yeah, brains work in weird ways. And I just keep, as I said, the second I discovered that Arthur Conan Doyle and Bram Stoker were related and were both in London, that was just firing off flags in my head going, oh my God, you've got to do that. You've got to use that.
So everything is on Amazon.
Everything's on Amazon and the individual publishings, like Marcosi Publishing is a UK comic book publisher. So, yeah, you can get off their website and things like that. And as I said, I'm desperately pushing hard to get things on audio as quickly as I can.
And do you have a website of your own? Or
I do.
You do?
Well, I've got my Amazon page. I've got my Goodreads page. On Facebook, you can find me. And if you're interested in the thing, if anybody's listening and they really want to know more about the thing, jump on my Facebook page because there's a lot of stuff that I cannot use in the book. The book is so big, and I was very constrained with the letter number. I couldn't go past a certain word count. So there's not a lot of images. Well, there's no images in the book because I just don't have the space for them. So on my Facebook page, I'm releasing everything. All these bizarre photos I found, all these other stories that I can't use, you'll get them for free on my Facebook page.
Right on, right on. So we'll make sure to put links and stuff so people could find your author page, find you on Facebook, so that way people could get connected and if they have questions, you're always accessible. Yeah.
And a lot of people have their own little things that I may not be aware of. Like a lot of people, when I was talking about writing the thing, came forward with their stories. They've visited where they filmed, the location where they filmed the thing, and they found bits of the helicopter that blew up, which is on their shelf. And all these personal stories. And that's what I mean. Like thing fans, we got to think of a word for them. Like thingites. Thingadings, that'll cause some fights.
There's probably already a word for it that we don't know, but
that is possible.
We'll have to find out. If anybody listening knows a term for thing fans, let us know.
But there's some of the most polite people in the world. Like if you say something that's wrong, yes, they'll point out that you no, that's not what actually happened. But it's not in a aggressive manner like it can be in some fandom.
Yeah.
It's like they're a little conglomerate. It's like we've all got a little bit of the thing in us and we're slowly being overtaken. And it's our future is the thing.
Well, you're in the future, you would know.
Well, that's true. Yeah, the thing's already taken over. Sorry, folks, I've got some bad news for you. I've just come back from Antarctica.
Yeah.
We're all screwed.
Yep. Being there you'd probably feel pretty screwed anyways, but yeah.
That's true. Although the Australian government's constantly offering up jobs at the Australia. Basically, you control the part of Antarctica that faces your coastline. So that's how much of Antarctica you are in charge of. And Australia has by far the largest part of Antarctica. We're the major, not owner because nobody owns Antarctica, but we manage the biggest part. So there's a lot of Australian scientific outposts out there, and they're always got jobs. And I'm constantly thinking, that'd be fun. It'd be fun for about a month. And then after a month, it would literally turn into the thing. Just like, let me get us out of here.
Phil, we'll make sure people come and check out the stuff, check out the work, check out the books. Definitely looking forward to the thing. Keep me posted.
I will. And I hope everyone has fun with it because I had fun with it. It was so much fun researching this stuff. And I did find some weird things. So I think people are going to enjoy it.
Hopefully you found some stuff that the hardcore fans didn't know. Hope they learned something. That's made me think of when you were talking about the reviews for the horror book, how you got the kind of disappointing reviews, but that reader still learned something from it.
Yeah, and that's why I highlighted that thing. I haven't had too many negative things, but that one really stuck with me, that even though they were kind of unhappy with what they were reading because it wasn't the story they thought it was going to be, they still at the end said, but I still got a lot out of it that I didn't know.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like with the Thing book, there'll probably be a lot of people like, "Oh, I knew that, but I didn't know this," so that made it worth the while. So that's why I think people should give it a chance or read it. If you're not a Thing fan, read it and maybe you'll become one.
Well, I think you're going to, because it's kind of a history of the last 100 years. The first book was done in 1930, I think it was. So we're not far off the 100th anniversary of that.
Well, Phil, thank you again for taking the time from the future and chatting for a few and telling us about what you got going on. It's cool to finally meet you and hear a little history lesson.
Thanks for having us.
Is there anything you wanna add here before we cut you free?
Yeah, I also write for the Prehistoric Times magazine. So if you like dinosaurs, we've got the world's longest running prehistoric magazine, and I have a couple of horror or pop culture articles coming out with scary monsters in the Castle of Frankenstein magazine. Yeah, they've got
love scary monsters.
Yeah, they've got an article of mine coming out about how Shazam was involved in the biggest bank heist in American history.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it's a weird story.
That sounds like your thing. Like you find the weird shit mixed in history and turn
That's
it
what
into
I do.
An interesting story.
I find the weird stuff.
That's awesome. Well, cool, man. Thank you again for hanging out, and it was great chatting and meeting. We're gonna do this again. I want to do this again, and it'll be fun.
You're listening to the Steve and Crypto podcast. This is Jack Rudo from the Stapled Spine fanzine here in Horror, Oregon. We write and publish everything from horror comics, bands, movies, puzzles, mazes, dirty jokes, sometimes boobs. I don't know. Come find us, stapledspine.com.
Hey, this is Dr. Gangrene. You're watching the Steve. No, you're not. You're listening to the Steve and Crypto Show right here on whatever network you're on. I don't know what you're on. Don't ask me. I can't see what you're doing, but keep listening and tune in next week for more cool content on the Steve and Crypto Show.
All right, we are back on the Steve and Crypto Show.
Paul left the room.
There was never a Paul here. Sorry, guys. I know you guys are worried, like, what the fuck happened to Crypto?
He was like, my name's Paul, and this is between y'all, and I'm out of here.
Yep, no, it's Crypto, for real. Crypto Zoo, not to be confused with the fucking, speaking of Pauls, but the Paul brothers scam that they pulled on people.
Oh, yeah.
The whole Crypto Zoo thing.
Uh-huh. I had a friend or two actually contact me about that, and they're like, do you have your name trademarked or anything? I'm like, no.
You should have.
Yeah.
That would have been good.
Yeah.
But he did use the name first. I wonder if you could, like, find a way to, I don't know, maybe you got, like, old show posters or something. And be like, look, this was 10 years ago. I was using this damn name before these two schmucks were YouTube stars.
I definitely do.
Any lawyers out there? What can we do about this? Can we sue the fucking Logan Paul? And
how much money can I get out of this?
Can we at least get like them to pay us to shut up and sign up on our Patreon for $20 a month or something? That would be enough to keep quiet.
Yeah, because I mean, Phil's last name might be Hore, but we're whores for money. So like, give us a bunch of money and we'll be quiet. I mean, shit, we might even change the name of this show if you do that, depending on how much money you give us.
Yeah, we're gonna change his name to Paul.
Yeah.
Paul Hore. No, but sorry, Phil. Thank you. Sorry we made jokes about your name. It's a good name. I enjoy it.
Yeah.
So yeah, Phil Hore, check out his stuff. I'll put a link to some of his stuff in the show notes so you could track it down and keep up on when the Thing book comes out. I think it's gonna be a good one.
You know what? There's a really cool movie a trilogy that I heard about recently that's going to be coming. I heard that David Gordon Green and Danny McBride, the guys that are behind the last Halloween trilogy, are going to be making It's funny that those two are behind it, you know? Like, I kind of like when people are out of their element a little bit, like Danny McBride, especially not being known for horror, but he's a fan. They both are. So it was cool that they managed to do that trilogy. Those guys are now working on an Exorcist trilogy.
Yeah, they are. That I'm not sure when that's coming, next year or the year after, somewhere in there.
I don't know.
But
it's supposed to be connected to the original film.
We'll see. I don't know if it's gonna be. Is it gonna be connected, or is it gonna be like a rebooted thing, like they did with Halloween?
We'll see.
But since we're on the topic of The Exorcist, and it's time for our trivia, let's have a quick little easy Exorcist trivia question.
Oh, what might that question be?
Well, first of all, the first question is, do you know where to tell us the answer to the trivia question? If not, find CryptoZoo88, find the Steve Strout on either Instagram or Twitter, or find us wherever you know us at. Tell us the answer to the dang question. We'll hand you a fancy sticker and take your name and put it on a list for a prize pack.
That's right. So there's a couple ways to get some stickers. Answer the trivia and leave a review on your favorite app and tag us in it. Take a picture and tag us in the photo, and we'll send you some stickers for that as well.
That'll work. So, the question is, in The Exorcist, what is the demon's name?
Martha.
Wrong exorcist. That made no sense, but
that's my mom's name too.
So, why'd you say that?
My mom and the demon both are named Martha.
Why'd you say that name? About to have a Batman Superman fight.
Where is she?
Why'd you say that name?
Where's Reagan?
But anyways, what's the demon's name in The Exorcist that possesses the girl and makes her throw up pea soup on priest and tell him his mother sucks cocks in hell and all that good stuff and shove a cross in her fucking you know what and piss on herself and all that.
I can't help but think of Scary Movie 2 as well and what they did with that, you know. Do you remember the ridiculousness behind that scene?
Like, I remember the scene happening, but I don't remember what happened.
She's talking to the priest, and she's like, your mother's in here. Would you like to leave a message? I'll make sure she gets it. And he's like, yeah, Mom, get out of there. And she's like under the covers. She's like, you're no fun. And walks out.
All right, yeah.
It's goofy.
Yeah. I remember why I didn't remember it.
Yeah. I didn't say it was great.
Okay.
I said it was goofy.
So, trivia question. Send us the answer. What's the demon's name in The Exorcist? Easy one. Just fucking, if you don't know, Google it.
I didn't know. You had to tell me. It's been a long time. Now I kind of want to watch The Exorcist again.
Yeah, I think I'm going to watch it soon, too.
And I want to watch Drag Me to Hell again because I found out that they're actually trying to find a way to make a sequel to that now. I just read that this week. Yeah. Sam Raimi, there's a couple things going on with him. He supposedly wants to make a Drag Me to Hell 2, and he wants to find a way to put Ash back into an Evil Dead film. I've read a couple different articles now, or at least the headlines for them, that said Sam wants Bruce back in an Evil Dead film. I mean, we'll see if it ever happens.
Is it like a legit article or some clickbait bullshit?
I don't recall. I mean, there's been some different rumors floating around. Like, Bruce says he's done, but he also is open to the idea of like an animated film or even a animated continuation of the series that they did. Because I love that show. Ash vs. Evil Dead was really fun.
I only watched the first season, but it was really good. I had every intent of watching the rest of it, but time, man.
Oh, man. I don't want to give it away, but it's such a funny scene. There's an episode with like a dead body laying on a table, and of course it gets possessed all of a sudden, and it literally is like the intestines are going around Bruce's neck, and it's trying to pull his head into the asshole of this dead body. He's like, not up the butt, not up the butt. I mean, it's just like really digging into the campiness of the series, but it's so great. So the series ended kind of on a cliffhanger. Like they had an idea for 2 more seasons. They were going to go into like a apocalyptic, like Mad Max setting. So
All right. Well,
We'll see if any of that ever happens.
I'm gonna get to watching it.
Yeah.
So don't spoil it for me yet. So yeah, like I said, I didn't watch it. I haven't watched a lot of things because I've been a busy guy, like doing the podcast. I've had a few things published in a fanzine called Stapled Spine, which you probably recognize from this show because they come on and they do a little segment here every month or so.
We love that segment.
It's
really
one
fun.
of my favorites.
Yeah.
So I've been writing for Stapled Spine. Been doing this, always connecting, working on things, and lately my latest venture has been helping. I'm credited as a producer. I'm basically kind of like more promoting, and because I'm not far enough away from production that I have to work remotely.
Pretty far from Ohio.
Yeah, so I'm working with a filmmaker named Matthew Mark Hunter, if I could say it, who is on this podcast, this very podcast, the Steve Paul Show, or the Steve and Crypto Show. A few episodes back.
105 or something, right?
Something like that.
Yeah.
It's crazy. We're on 110 already.
Yeah.
Remember, we're just celebrating episode 100 with Darcy the Mail Girl. Speaking of that, Joe Bob's coming back April
21st.
April 21st. But let me get back to what I was talking about. So I'm producing a movie called Nightmares Unleashed from MMH Productions. MMH, Matthew Mark Hunter. We have an Indiegogo going for the film. Trying to raise funds to make the movie. It's Matthews has over 200 films under his belt. Mostly short films. But he's put out over 200 productions. Multiple went to DVD. He has a bunch of them on the Troma streaming app as well. It's like, the kid's doing good stuff. He's a young dude, been making movies since he was like 16. I think he's 22 now.
That's really impressive. And to have that many under your belt at such a young age, too. I mean, he has plenty of time ahead of him.
For sure. But this is going to be his first feature that he's writing, directing. He's also doing some of the acting in it. It's called Nightmares Unleashed. Check out the Indiegogo. I'm going to put the link in the show notes. And I did last week as well. So find it, check it out. Consider kicking in a few bucks. There's a lot of cool perks. You could get props from the movie. You could get signed stuff. You could pre-order the physical copy of the movie. You could be a producer on the movie. All kinds of cool shit you could do.
Tell them Steven Crypto sent you to give them money.
Yes, do that too. So check it out. It's going to be a fun movie. And why don't Crypto Paul Hore run through all the other ways you could show this podcast some love. Your third favorite podcast, the Steve and Crypto Show.
Once again, head over to patreon.com/SteveCrypto to go check out some exclusive content right now with a Scream 6 spoiler review coming soon. Also, you can head over to our Etsy page if you want to score some really cool merch for your third favorite podcast. Go to Etsy/shop/Steve and Crypto merch. T-shirts, magnets, coffee mugs galore. Go check them out. Follow us online at CryptoZoo88 and the Steve Strout. Be sure to contribute and join the Facebook group that we have and post whatever you're working on. We want to see it, and I know a lot of other people want to check it out as well. OCE Con, April 29th, Kitsap Mall, Silverdale, Washington.
Again, leave us a review.
Leave reviews wherever you're listening to us.
Leave reviews, and we will read them on air. So leave us a review. We'll read it. We'll give you a shout out and all that cool stuff. Just think, you have your review read for 8 people. It's like a dream come true for some of you. So do it. Do all that stuff. Keep supporting, sharing, spreading the word. And we will keep doing this. And hopefully entertaining you. And next week, the real Crypto Zoo will be back. No more Pauls and
no more horrors.
Yeah, well, Phil Hore, he'll be back sometime.
Yeah,
but not this horror. Not Paul Hore. Paul Hore is a dick. But hey, this was episode 110. We thank you guys, and here's to many more.
Thanks for listening. Peace.